From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Gleason.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Thank you, and welcome to the 2 p.m. portion of our Tuesday, September 12, 2017 meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. I'm going to begin today's meeting with a report on actions taken in closed session, so I'll ask Mr. Mark Nations, our County Counsel, to do so. Mr. Nations, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board did meet in closed session on items 58, 59, 60, and 61. There are no reportable actions coming out of any of those closed sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nations. I want to welcome everyone and ask if you would like to follow along with our agendas, that you go grab one from the back tables. We're going to begin with our consent agendas. All items listed with a CA or C above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. The CA represents the consent agenda for the Board of Supervisors. The C represents the consent agenda for the Kern Sanitation Authority and the Ford City-Taft Heights Sanitation District. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item or items on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken on the consent agenda. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. So at this time, I'll read the consent agenda items for the Board of Supervisors. Starting on page 2, item 5 is on consent. On page 3, items 6 through 9 are on consent. On page 4, all items 10 through 15 are on consent. On page 5, all items 16 through 22 are on consent. Page 6, all items 23 through 28 are on consent. On page 7, all items 29 through 33 are on consent. Page 8, all items 34 through 38 are on consent. And page 9, items 39 through 41 are all on consent. Page 10, all items 42 through 44 are on consent. On page 11, all items 45 through 51 are on consent. Page 12, all items 52 through 60 are on consent. Page 13, items 61 through 68 are all on consent. And finally, on page 14, items 69 and 70 are on consent. So I'll ask if there are any members of the public that would like to make comment on the consent agenda for the Board of Supervisors. Please come forward, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Gaitan, and I wanted to talk about the CA32.
Okay, CA32. Would you spell your last name for me, please?
Gaytan.
Okay, and what's your comment, Mrs. Gaitan?
Well, there's a charge to this to Lake Isabella property of $6,000 and over dollars. We just received a paper stamped on the premises on Lake Isabella telling us that they were going to have this meeting today. I didn't receive anything prior. There's 3 addresses at this location, and they supposedly sent information to these 3 addresses. None of them go to my address. None of them go to our location, so I'm not sure. The thing is that we were renting this property. This property, we took them to court so we could evict them because they never paid rent. They never paid anything, and it was a recycling center. The recycling center, I guess they backed up and they had all this stuff there that we didn't realize they had this. I was trying to evict them by then for 3 months. It took me a total of about 7 months to get them out. which left me totals of about $7,000, which court fees and then plus other things, not including this, the code compliance. If I would have gotten any information regarding this, most likely I would have called in right away and said, what can we do? What can be done? I need to take care of this because I also have their eviction fees and everything, and they didn't even pay rent or anything. So like, it would have been easier for me. They were sending notifications to the location there, but they never, of course, they weren't gonna tell me or anything. My main concern is that they still owe me about more or less about $7,000 in fees for taking them out and for them not paying rent or anything. Plus the fees that they're trying to charge me for the code compliance for cleaning. If we would have known, most likely my husband and I, we would have went over there to double check and see and take care of it, not let it get to this extent. We would have tried to clean it up ourselves, not had the city do it. So my main thing is that we didn't receive anything. It didn't go, we didn't get notification of it. So I don't know what to do.
Okay.
This is the first time I've been here. I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McGuyton. This is in Supervisor Gleason's district, and so I'll ask him if he'd like to make some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, appreciate it. I would like to get to the bottom of this. I just became aware of this now that the notifications weren't going the right place. So in order to have that conversation so that we can vote in confidence of what we're doing, I request respectfully that we pull this item off the agenda so we can discuss it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. You can go ahead and have a seat. We'll hear this item in listed sequence, so it'll be in a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, any other members of the public have any other comments on the consent agenda? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll return to the board and ask if any board members would like to pull an item. I know Supervisor Maggard has a statement that he'd like to read into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to item number 6 on our consent agenda this afternoon, this item represents a potential source of income to myself, so I'll abstain from that. I'll still vote for the consent agenda with the exception of item number 6. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Maggard. And so, seeing no other requests with item 32, we'll pull that one off the consent agenda and hear that in a few minutes. And so if there are no other requests from supervisors, then I would request a motion that we approve the consent agenda and adjourn as the Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Kern Sanitation Authority.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Okay, so we're now sitting as the Kern Sanitation Authority, and we have one item on the consent agenda. That's item number 1. Are there any members of the audience that would like to make any comments on item number 1? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board and request a motion to approve the consent agenda for the Kern Sanitation Authority and to adjourn as the KSA and reconvene as the Ford City-Taft Heights Sanitation District.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. So we're now sitting as the Ford City-Taft Heights Sanitation District, and we have one item on the consent agenda. That's item number 2. Are there any members of the audience who would like to make any comment on item number 2 for the Ford City-Taft Heights Sanitation District? Okay, seeing none, then we return to the board and ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda for the Ford City-Taft Heights Sanitation District and to adjourn as the Ford City-Taft Heights Sanitation District and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors.
So moved. Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
Okay, now this brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which is public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. So I'll ask if there are any members of the public that would like to make a public presentation. Please come forward, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Grimion. Last name is spelled Gremillion. Thank you, esteemed board members, for hearing our community today. And I wanted to say Give thanks to Supervisor Gleason, to the Kern County Planning Department, as well as the Public Works Department for its recent activities and as of yesterday, as in taking the next step to clean our community up. I prepared a presentation for the board to just give everyone an overview of our community. We're in an unincorporated part of Kern County. It's an E25 zone. Our family, as well as many others, invested in this community, one for the protective rights of the existing land use regulations, but then also for the fabric of our neighborhood and for views like this. This is an overview of our neighborhood. This neighborhood is solely served by View Street into Cliff Avenue. There's one way in and one way out. All property owners, because it's unincorporated, our property lines go to the center line of the street. We have no fire loop, no fire services that serve these homes. So it's managed by the neighborhood. And as you can see in the overview here, most of these properties are horse neighborhoods or horse residences. This is just some of the views of what we are blessed to enjoy on a daily basis as we walk our kids in our neighborhood, our barns, our horses, our families, our gardens, which my kids go over and actually pick fruit from our neighbors. Some of just a graphic of the money that we invest in our neighborhoods. One, with the existing land use regulations to maintain the value of our properties. And this is the street. Once again, we maintain our own roads. It's not rated for heavy industrial equipment. On January 20th, the subject property was purchased during the rain season, and this is what occurred over the period of 2 months, was just massive devastation to the land. Rerouting of drainage. It started running down the street here. You can see that this heavy equipment was parked on the other side of the street. We started seeing caving in the asphalt as the heavy equipment was moved in. We immediately notified County Planning Department, who then notified code enforcement. Over the period of the next few months, what we saw was the property owner then began to service his vehicles and actually run his business out of here, and would run late into the night, grinding and welding. This is a neighborhood that goes to bed at 9 o'clock every night. And so this started occurring on a daily basis, and then more refuse started to get moved in, oil cans, tires, just an overall just garbage. And the neighbors, actually many neighbors had confronted the resident, had told him that this was not, was not right and that it wasn't allowed use. And we were told effectively that, he'd just as well make enemies rather than friends in this neighborhood. So we just continued to photo document. We stayed in contact with the planning department. A code enforcement officer was assigned. We forwarded photos to the code enforcement officer. There was a series of attempts, not only by the code enforcement department to submit mail-issued notices, which the subject property purposefully did not get a mailbox to avoid getting such notices, but also the San Joaquin Air Valley Control District sent him a notice of warning, which was returned undeliverable. So this occurred July 19th, the same thing. But we kept working with code enforcement, with planning department to make sure all the information was provided to them. And the use continued here till ultimately on September 1st, the property owner actually brought in a high piece of equipment, severed the electrical line during this last heat wave. 178 customers lost power. We actually currently have a transformer that's leaking oil. We had PG&E come out there just the other night. And we also have AT&T with phone services that are down. So it got to the point now we finally had to, just become more verbal and just keep pushing and requesting that this use be not allowed. And the point being is that if there was a spark, that was 110 degrees that day, and if there was a spark when that power line came down, not having the fire protection services with the winds, the prevailing winds actually pull across our entire property, that entire place would have burned down in a flash. We have elderly people that live that need assistance, and with only one way in and one way out through all those houses, it could have been quite destructive. So we're here before you today. Once again, we wanted to first thank you for your recent activity. We were very pleased to see that the next level of enforcement was being enacted, and we just welcome your proactive actions. We're here to work with the county, with the different departments, just to maintain the value of our property and the safety of our community. The average, I'm in real estate, the average industrial land sale price on a per square foot from January 15 to current was on the median average of $598 a square foot. And that's for industrial property. This property was bought for $345,000. That represents about a $3.14 a foot on a land value for a property that's non-compliant that a person can live in. So he's effectively undercut the market. And if this use were to continue to go unenforced, it will set a precedence. And given that the TRIP has just invested all of this money in the 178, what will happen is you will see more uses come in if they're unabated. And that will destroy property value. And at the end of the day, that affects property tax value to the county. So wanted to thank you all again for your time, and that's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Gramillion. I know Supervisor Gleason has a keen interest in this issue, and so I'll ask if he'd like to make some comments.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. With your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Fenton, come on up and grab a seat. Mr. Gramillion, you can grab a seat right there. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate you coming today. I drive near your neighborhood on a regular basis, and it is a lovely place, and we're going to keep it that way. Mr. Fenton, could you please take us through the events of the past couple months and how we have responded to the complaints from this neighborhood?
Supervisor Gleason, through the chair. Sure. This was brought to our attention, I believe it was February. We received the complaint. In March, we issued a notice and order to the property owner to abate the violation, primarily the non-residential equipment, the trucks, tractors. You saw a lot of pictures. There's a lot of stuff out at that site. We issued the notice and order again. The first one was in March. We gave them some time to clean things up. We went back a couple months later. Nothing had changed except maybe got a little worse. We issued another notice and order. I believe that was in June, at which time the owner not so politely told us to go fly a kite. We issued an administrative citation, just one tool we have in the toolbox to try and compel them to comply through a financial penalty. That was not received well either. We have issued citations number 2 and 3, kind of exhausted what I have in my toolbox, and we're getting no cooperation. Again, you've heard from the residents, it's horrible what they're going through. So yesterday we took the next step, trying to deal with the vehicles and the equipment. We're going to take a 2-part approach dealing with the equipment and the vehicles. Yesterday we executed an inspection warrant. Met out there with the sheriff to make sure everything was secure and safe for code compliance staff to inspect the site, and we tagged we post a tag on the vehicles that are in violation, about 50 of them. During that inspection, we also identified several other violations, potentially buildings that were done without permits. Of course, we have the land use violations, possibly operating a business, trash, junk, and debris, inoperable vehicles. The list goes on. So we've tuned up our correction list, issuing another notice and order. So we're working on the vehicles now. When we tagged them yesterday, those instructions indicate they have 30 days to remove the vehicles. I propose to come back to your board in a couple of weeks with a second action requesting your board to determine the rest of the site a public nuisance so we can abate all the trash, junk, and debris and everything else. But we want to get started on those vehicles now because the residents have put up with this long enough. So that's where we are today.
Thanks, Fenton. And talk to me about the sheriff.
Well, again, when we serve an inspection warrant, we have the sheriff accompany us to make sure it's safe for my code compliance staff. Generally, they will do a background check or do some homework on the property owners to see who we're dealing with. And I don't know all the specifics, but before we met at the site, we were informed by the sheriff's department to wait for them. They were bringing in some additional resources. I can only assume that they discovered some characteristics about the owner that had them concerned. So they showed up in numbers, much more than we're used to seeing. The owner was not on site, so we were able to do our thing without incident.
Thanks. I appreciate the sheriff for making that decision to
Absolutely.
come work with you, because the last thing we want is to have any of our employees ever exposed to unnecessary danger or unnecessary areas where they don't know what the risk level is. And I think the sheriff must have had some inclination that may be the situation here, and that's why he decided to join you. I'm glad he did. Okay, so my understanding of the situation is this. We've gone through our normal protocols. We've made the proper notifications. We've red tagged the vehicles. And we are proceeding along a way to remove that nuisance from that neighborhood completely, correct?
That is correct.
What's-
Again, kind of a two-stage. We're going
Right.
to deal with the vehicles 30 days from yesterday, and I'll be back to your board shortly with the next step.
And what's the timeline on that? Give me the exact timeline, and we can expect everything to be wrapped up.
I'll be back to your board again. We added items to the list that needs to be abated, so we had to renotice. They have 30 days. Ideally, they will take care of the things themselves, not having confidence that they will do so. I'm prepared to come back to your board. I believe that will be October 17th? October 17th.
So have you had any contact with the owner since we went in yesterday? Has he called or made any
I
contact with you?
believe the owner has talked with one of the code compliance officers.
And what happened in that conversation?
I didn't get into all the details, other than he was upset. It was bad timing for him. But again, it's been 6 months. We've given him ample time and not seeing any production.
I'm not really overly concerned about his bad timing myself.
I understand. The only,
But what's the cost to the county for what we're doing?
the
And how
cost-
are we going to get this gentleman to offset those costs?
Right, the cost to abate the vehicles, everything with an axle on it that we tagged yesterday, we have an agreement with the towing company where they will remove those and impound them at no cost to the county. The backside of that is they will be impounded, and the owner will need to pay those impoundment fees to get them out of impoundment, and that's only after code compliance is determined he's got a legal place to store that equipment. We won't allow them to be released from impoundment just so they can go back to that same site. That's not going to happen. So we'll have some staff costs involved for the efforts that we've done to date. But for the vehicles, that's why we're proceeding with this one now. There'll be minimal cost from the county, but the owner will have to pony up to get those out of impoundment. Now, the second stage, to clean up the rest of the site, again, we will request that the owner take care of that. If he does not, then the county will initiate that to be cleaned up and everything abated, and we will invoice the property owner for all of the costs incurred. And if we hear nothing back, I'll be back in front of your board again.
Thank you, Ms. Fenton. One more question for you. I'm sure this board agrees with me when I say that I don't want any employee or any individual in Kern County to be exposed to any unnecessary risks because of anything that we're doing, trying to do what we need to do. So the sheriff has made a determination for whatever reason that he needed to have that action happen, and I just want to be fully briefed on everything we're doing as we're doing it, so that I can be sure and this board can be confident that none of our employees are exposed to anything they don't need to be exposed to.
I will keep you informed, Supervisor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Gleason. Mr. Fenton, thank you very much. Are there any other public presentations?
My name is Gordon Nipp, NIPP. My wife and I live in this community, and I just want to very briefly reinforce what Jason Gramillion has presented here, and thank you for your efforts on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Any others? How many folks are here on this item, just as interest, not necessarily speaking? Okay. Got it.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Gonzalez. I live on the corner of View and 178, one house down from this property. I built my house there in 1989 from the ground up, owner builder. I've really been happy living in that neighborhood. I've seen it develop. I've seen the whole area develop. 178, you guys bought some property from me on the highway when they made it wider. This incident that happened yesterday really pushed things over the edge. This neighbor is not good for the neighborhood. I appreciate, Mr. Gleason, your interest and how you're following up on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez.
Good afternoon. I'm David Shale, and my wife and I have the dubious honor and unfortunate distinction of being the backdoor neighbors of the individual in question. So whenever we go out to our backyard, we generally have volumes of black diesel smoke pouring over our back fence. And we're really tired of it and all the noise. And for a period of several weeks, we had spotlight shining into our master bedroom window, which was a bit disconcerting. So we're very thankful that you are on the move and you're going to be taking care of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Shale, just for the record, is your last name S-H-A-L-E, is that right? Or
S-C-H-A-L-E.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
My name is Eva Nip, N-I-P-P. I live in this beautiful area that has been decimated by one individual. And you mentioned unnecessary danger, that you don't want any of your people to be in unnecessary danger. Our community has been in unnecessary danger for half a year. Children at play. We just heard 2 Fridays ago a big pop and our power went out. That is unnecessary danger when the line has been severed by a big industrial machine. I can't imagine that anybody who wants to purchase a home of 2.5 acres and exits Highway 178 and starts going up the hill on View Street, and all of a sudden sees the first house is a beautiful house with beautiful flowers, and then the second house as well, and all of a sudden that person who wants to purchase a house for sale sees a big junkyard. And that has been going on for 6 months. I would imagine that some of the people who have had their house for sale have had some problems with that, and that is unacceptable. When we live in a country that has the rule of law really should be enforced in a timely manner. And we have really tried hard for half a year to get that taken care of. Also, it was mentioned cost to the county. Our cost is going to be immense. We have a private road. View Street and Cliff Street are private roads, and the property owners must pay for those private road repairs. The road has been damaged extensively by these giant machines going up and down the street. In fact, I know when the machines go up and down the street because our whole house vibrates. And that is not the case when the garbage truck goes up and down the street. Our house does not vibrate. So you can imagine the force of these huge machines that are going up and down the street, damaging our road. And the question is, who is going to pay for the damage of this road? And who is going to pay for the toxins that have been dumped onto this property, because the owner may very well sell his home soon, and then the new owner will have to be faced with a huge cost of paying for the cleanup. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other speakers? Please come forward. Come up to the microphone, please.
My name's Tim Hickey. Me and my wife live at 1275 James Street.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you state your name, spell your last name?
Timothy Odine Hickey.
How do you spell your last name, please?
Hickey.
Okay, thank you. Please
I'm
proceed.
disabled. I own the property. No one lives on it but me and my wife. We're not renters. I keep getting things saying that I'm renting. I have but one vehicle. That's my RV in the back. And it's behind the fence, but people keep tearing it down. And I'm trying to work with them, but...
Sir, are you speaking to an item that's on the agenda?
The notice hereby given for owners, and it's a Boron,
What's the address, sir?
1275 James Street, Code Compliance Division. I got a notice in the mail saying that today was a protest hearing on proposed confirmation of administrative penalties. It was waived once before, but they're trying to put it back on.
Okay, this is item 33 on the agenda. We just approved this item a few minutes ago. If you have a seat, I'll go ahead and I'll request that the board reopens the item and we can have a discussion on it. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other speakers under public presentations? Okay, then we'll move on to board member announcements or reports. You have any of those? Okay, seeing none. Okay, well, the next item on the agenda is going to be item 32, which we pulled off a consent, and then we will hear if the board will agree to hear item 33. So we need a motion to reopen item 33, please.
Motion.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. Okay, so item 32, Mr. Fenton, when you're ready, this is item number 32 under Public Works Department.
Thank you, Chairman Scribner. Actually, item 32, I'll make this one short and sweet, I think. Obviously, the owner in the audience, Ms. Gatan, is questioning the noticing. We're confident that we noticed and posted everything on site correctly. However, just to remove all doubt, I will recommend that your board continue this to October 24th, and we will confirm that all of the noticing was done properly.
Okay, continue to October 24th, that's your recommendation?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Ms. Gatan, would you like to make any comment? That's the recommendation from staff. I'll return to the board unless you have additional comment. Do you have anything else you wanted to add? Supervisor Gleason, I know, has something to say, but this is going to give an opportunity for you to have conversations with staff in regards to the nuisance that's on the property. Okay. All right. So the indication is that she's okay with that. Supervisor Gleason?
Thank you very much. So what we're doing, what we've created here, thank you, Mr. Chairman, is we've created an opportunity. We're not going to make a decision today. We're going to make it October 24th. We're going to review the processes, confer with you directly, and make sure that we got it all right, and then we're going to go forward on October 24th and make a decision. So with the recommendation for continuance on this issue, I will motion we approve staff's recommendation.
Yeah, the motion's to continue to October 24th. Please-
Second.
Okay, please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, all ayes.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll hear item 33 that we approved on the consent agenda, but we have a request to discuss this item, and so we've reopened it. And sir, I'm going to ask you to just wait 1 minute. I'm going to ask Mr. Fenton to give us a description of this item, and then we'll ask you to come back up. Mr. Fenton, please.
Thank you, Chairman Scrivener. This is a protest hearing to confirm costs and administrative penalties for costs incurred for abatement work located at 12075 James Street in Boron. That's Assessor's Parcel Number 231-331-30. It is owned by Timothy Odine Hickey, was determined by the Public Works Department to constitute a public nuisance under Chapter 8.44. Your staff report cites the specific violations that were present. We have cleaned up the site. We've abated the nuisances. We did issue some administrative penalties back in January of 2015 for $500 and another $1,000 penalty on March 24th of 2015. Again, that's to compel the owner to self-abate. And there was an administrative penalty issued earlier in 2014, but that was later waived. And I missed all of, or a little bit of what Mr. Hickey was talking about, but it sounded like something to do with the administrative penalties. So I'm curious to see exactly what it is, but again, the work has been done. This is asking your board to confirm the cost.
Thank you. And just for everyone's information, the first notification was on October 23rd, 2012 of the violation, is that correct? So the notice orders were mailed October 23rd, October 30th of 13, so a year later, and then again in November of, is that correct?
That's correct, Supervisor.
Okay, so this has
Chairman
been
Scrivener.
going on for 6 years?
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Hickey, please come forward.
I became owner of the property 2/7/14.
Okay.
And as you can see in the pictures, there's no broken windows. I had no broken windows. There's no two vehicles. Did you find the vehicle when you abated my house when my mother had a stroke? But I have no broken windows. I'm disabled. I'm on Social Security disability. Me and my wife are the only ones that live there. I'm the owner, and I could use a little help, but I mean, I do the best I can, and that's all I can say. I know there was no two vehicles. I know that there's no broken windows, and every night I catch somebody tearing my fence down, and I have to go patch it back up, so now it looks like a patchwork. And let me see. There's two pictures right here. Number 1/21/2015. Do you have the pictures?
There are some pictures that are included in the staff report. If you have some pictures that you would like the board to see, you could provide those to Mr. Fenton, and he'd be able to put them on the projector.
Okay. This is the first picture, and that's the second picture on the same date, and the fence is tore down, but it's up, and
Mr. Hickey, I'm sorry, you go ahead, you come back to the microphone, so we get.
The first picture, the fence is up, and then the next picture, the fence is down. I'd like to know how it got tore down between the two pictures on the same date.
Okay, I'm.
That's the one that's up, and then the next picture, there's where it's down. That's the same corner. You scoot it over, please.
Chairman Scribner, I would point out that these are the same photos that's in your board package, your
Yeah,
staff
thank you.
report. And again, and Mr. Rojas in the audience maybe has a better recollection, almost implying that we're knocking down the fence between photos, which I'm
I'm not
sure
saying you guys are, I'm
staff-
just saying that
Sure.
Okay.
somebody is.
Okay, Mr. Hickey, thank you. I'd ask you if you could take a seat for us, please. And I'm going to ask Mr. Rojas to come up so we can get some clarification if necessary. If you want to join
And
Mr. Fenton, if you want to join him at the dais, it's up to you, Mr. Rojas, and then we'll get some explanation of it.
yeah, and Chairman Scribner, while
Yes.
Mr. Rojas coming up, staff reports indicating that the abatement consisted of removal of trash, junk, debris, dismantling and removing the fence, and cutting and trimming the excessive vegetation and weeds. I don't think vehicles were a part of that abatement during this time.
Okay, Mr. Hickey, I want to give Mr. Rojas an opportunity here. If we have any additional questions for you, we'll let you come back up.
Thank you.
Mr.
Supervisor
Rojas?
Scribner.
Yeah, please proceed.
The question that the individual posed was, why is one picture showing a fence and the other picture is not showing a fence? I do believe it is just the angle of the camera shot. If you look at,
I'm trying to find it in the board packet right now.
I'm sorry,
No, if you could put it back up,
Yeah.
put it back on the screen for the other board members, but I'm scanning through it. This is an extensive record you have here, so I'm,
so if you look at that photograph, it's towards the rear of the property, and if
Okay,
you look at this
right.
photograph, it's towards the front of the property.
That's the same, that's the same corner.
It's, if you're referring to it being way in the back, it does, if that's the same corner, where are the two trees that are in the bottom photograph?
okay.
To the left of where that's down is that wooden fence.
Mr. Hickey, we're not able to hear you on the microphone, but we're
I apologize.
looking, no, you're fine.
Again, I just believe it's the angle of the camera shot.
Right. Yeah, I believe you're correct. Okay, so Mr. Fenton, so we've already done the work, and how many notifications, total notifications and administrative penalties have we issued in this case?
Chairman Scribner, as you pointed out up front, we started with notifications back in October of 2012. It looks like we've sent minimum of 6. And we issued administrative penalties, again, starting with $250, $500, and $1,000, and that $250 penalty was waived. That was the first one that was issued. But the $500 and $1,000 administrative penalties are still being pursued.
Okay, and so those were not paid?
Correct.
And Mr. Hickey, I'm assuming that you did live on the property in 2012? But you purchased it in you became the owner in 2014? Okay. Well, the situation we have here is the county is a complaint, our code compliance division is complaint driven. So there was a complaint that we received, an anonymous complaint on your property, and staff has been attempting to address that complaint for about 6 years. And we've already gone out and done the work on the property. And so I don't see that this board has any choice but to assess the penalties and also the cleanup costs. So the taxpayers are not going to have to bear the burden of removing the nuisance from your property. But I will ask Mr. Fenton if we are able, Mr. Higgs indicated that he has some challenges. I believe he said that he is disabled. Is that correct, sir? And so do we have the ability to work with him as far as a payment plan or some type of consideration in light of that?
Chairman Scribner, we do. We will meet with Mr. Hickey and see if we can work something out. We do have some payment plans as an option.
Okay, thank you. And so I'm going to request the board approves Item 33, staff's recommendation, assessing the abatement costs and the penalties.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Do we have any questions from any members of the board?
I'll second.
Okay, you have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Mr. Hickey, I would...
The motion is approved, all ayes.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Madam Clerk. Mr. Hickey, I would recommend that you get with Mr. Rojas and you start discussing a way in which we can recoup those costs. That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda this afternoon, and so I will request a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, September 19th at 9 a.m. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
We are adjourned.